Hey, what's up, everybody? So, welcome to Nine Vibes. What we're going to do is we're going to talk about the 3-4-5 triangle, but we're not going to just talk about it in terms of. Sorry, to make sure I get my markers. We're not going to talk about it in terms of just the scientific side or the mathematical side. We're actually going to talk about it in terms of spirituality. But to be able to do that, we first have to explain just a little bit about this triangle. So, what you're seeing here is you're seeing a 3-4-5 triangle. Now, what this means is it means that you have 3 over here, 4 over here, 5 over here. The idea is that this one is going to be a little bit less than this one, and this one's going to be a little bit larger. Now, Pythagorean referred to this as the Pythagorean triangle or the 3-4-5 triangle. Now, there's a lot of information you can find in the 3-4-5 triangle. For instance, if you were to cube these, 3 times 3 times 3 is going to be 27, 4 times 4 times 4 is going to be 64, and 5 times 5 times 5 is going to be 125. So, if you end up adding 27 plus 64 plus 125, you end up at 216. Now, 216 is an exceptionally important number, and we're going to talk about it here in a little bit. But for right now, I just want you to see that what Pythagoras figured out is he figured out that any number that you put here, here, and here will perfectly balance with a Pythagorean triangle if it is a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Okay, so the understanding is that you would square this, and it would equal to this right here. But again, we're not going to be talking about the actual math and science of it. What we're going to talk about is spirituality. Okay? So, the first thing we're going to talk about when it comes to spirituality is we have to agree on what is the most universal experience when it comes to spirituality, right? You can take Jesus, you can take Krishna, you can take Buddha, you can take any type of character that you want, and we are still going to find out that the most general thing that everybody believes in is God. Now, you do have people that don't believe in God, and that's completely fine. You have atheists, you have different paths. Nothing wrong with that. What we're saying is that the majority believe in God before they believe in Jesus, before they believe in Krishna, before they believe in Buddha, before they believe in Muhammad. They believe in God, which means that God is actually the most weighted out of this situation. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to put the number 432. Okay? This is representing God. Okay? So we'll go ahead and put a little G here. This is representing God. Now, the thing that's so fascinating when you study different cultures and different religions is you realize that they all have this character that's up here. Right? This character that's up here can be Jesus, Yeshua. This character that's up here can end up being Krishna. This character that's up here could end up being Buddha, but the bottom line is that these two characters are identical. They weigh the exact same thing, almost. Okay? The reason I say that they are identical is because of the fact that you've never met either one of these characters. Even if you've had an experience with God, it's a personal experience. Even if you've had an experience with Jesus, it's a personal experience. A lot of times I get asked the question when it comes to my NDE, people say, how is it you can talk about Jesus and talk about God, but you don't talk about it in your NDE? And my response is the same. What character would have shown up in my NDE that would have made me go, right there, that's Jesus? Because in all honesty, down the street is a dispensary, and that dispensary has this guy who is absolutely awesome, and he looks identical to Jesus. He's got the hair, he's got the style, he's very laid back. He reminds me of exactly what Jesus would look like if I went off of the biblical understanding. So the whole entire point is I have no idea what or how Jesus looked. I have never met Jesus. And I tell people this all the time. I never was around when the stories were written, and so it's not my place to say whether or not he looked exactly that way or whether or not he even existed the way that we wrote it. So the understanding is that when it comes to these characters, we've never met them. We've never physically, tangibly met them. And that makes a lot of sense. God is never going to come to you as one very specific thing and not come to someone else as what would be personal for them, right? You can't have God show up as a white man in the clouds to someone in China, to a little girl in China who has never learned about that. That would be terrifying for her. The same way as the way that they learn about their God can't come to a Christian person, or that would be terrifying for them. So the idea is that God is interchangeable and will always be interchangeable to be personal for you. But so does Jesus, and so does this other character that's in between that. So what we're going to do is we're going to write 216. And the reason we're going to write 216 is because these two are identical in terms of they would be 432. But we have to choose one to be more universal. And the one that's more universal will be double what this one is, which means it will be 432. 216 times 2 is 432. This is God. This is Jesus. This is Krishna. This is Buddha. Okay? These are the characters of what we call light. Okay? That's what you're talking about. You're talking about something you can't see in any way, shape, or form. Then you're talking about something you can. You can strive to. You can walk the walk of Jesus. You can walk the walk of Buddha. You can walk the walk of Krishna or Muhammad or any of them. Okay? So this is what we call the path of light. Okay? Now, what is so cool about this is we're down here. We are the 18. The reason we are the 18 is because of the understanding that 18 is represented by 666, which is carbon. Okay, make no mistake, it is not an evil number or anything like that. It is carbon. 6 electrons, 6 protons, 6 neutrons. It is very important to know the different elements, especially when you're trying to understand the world or understand your own body. So humans are represented by carbon, which is going to end up being the 666. Now, if you take 6 plus 6 plus 6, you end up with 18. Okay? So, what is so amazing about this is there is a general teaching that is right before our eyes. If you, as a human, want to live as a god, okay? And it's not impossible. You absolutely can. If you want to live as a god, if you want to live as the most compassionate, loving, kind, trusting being that we can possibly imagine, then it means you have to do one thing and one thing only. And that is, you have to live it 24 hours a day. Every choice, every decision, every moment, you will choose love. Every decision, you will choose trust. Every decision, you will choose compassion. Okay? That is how you take 18 times 24 and you end up at 432. You have to walk it, you have to live it, you have to talk it 24/7. That's a lot. Okay? That's a lot to take on. It is not impossible, but there is a lot that you would have to take on at that point. So instead, what we did is we created another step, another way. And what it is it's to get to here. Okay? So in other words, going this direction, very, very, very difficult. Very difficult. Not impossible, very difficult. But if you can't go this direction, you can actually go this direction. And the reason is because there will end up being 12 steps, okay? There will be 12 steps between you and whatever light being you're trying to become. Whatever light being you're trying to live your life out as. And the reason is because 18 times 12 is going to end up being 216. Okay? So what you're seeing here, and more importantly, you can divide this in half. You can divide this as a halfway point and you'd end up being at 108. And make no mistake, if you're talking about breathing, meditation, if you're talking about yogi, if you're talking about prayer, if you're talking about understanding the cosmos, if you're talking about understanding the sun, the moon, any of these things, you're going to find this number everywhere. 108 is everywhere. And I have a whole entire slideshow that you can check out if you want to see that. But that's that halfway point that is right here. Okay, but if you want to go the full distance, you go 12 steps. Now, this is aligned by Jesus and his 12 disciples. This is aligned by Uranus, which is the planet that represents Jesus, that actually has one singular epsilon ring and 12 smaller ones, which of course are going to represent that. This is also aligned by Jesus being the sun, and you have the 12 zodiacs, right, which is basically the movement of energy through the 12 different zodiacs that we have. So 12 is a very powerful number, and it's an important number. And even if you're on the path of, let's say, getting out of an addiction, there's 12 steps. There's you going to this phase that you want to be, which technically the opposite of addiction is not sobriety, it's connection. So if you made 12 steps, 12 connections, you would end up living at that level that you're talking about. Okay? So the idea is that it doesn't matter what path you take. The view will be the same from the top, but you do need to set an understanding of there are going to be 12. Mainly just to align with the understanding that 18 times 12 will take you to that place that you want to get. Okay? So the idea is that this 3-4-5 triangle is not only very, very scientific, and it is very mathematical. And when you put the Fibonacci to it, it's absolutely amazing. But for right now, all we're talking about is just the spiritual side. The understanding that you start at 18. And if you want to live as God, you absolutely can. But if you're going to start telling people you are God, if you're going to stand on that understanding that you are God, you need to be walking it 24/7, which means you can't be yelling at people on Facebook, which means you can't be upset at your family for the things that they're doing or judging the people in the world that you don't understand for what's going on, because that's not walking this. That's walking this. That's going through the step of then judgment, which is one of the things we have to work on ourselves. right? What would you judge by? This is all in the Bible as well. And this isn't just about the Bible. Make no mistake. I just use this as a general understanding. You can plug in any character that you want. Every single religion has a character that you can actually live up to long before you'll be God, because most religions don't believe you'll actually reach this level. So they have to put something in between. Okay? So you have 18 times 12 is going to end up taking you to 216, which is going to take you to light, which is going to take you to the thing that you're trying to basically be like. And it's also the understanding of why in the Bible it says that Jesus is the light, that Jesus is the light bringer. Also talks about Lucifer being the morning star. Why? Because all these things are the understanding that you have to go through a path. You have to go through a journey of your own darkness, of your own unawareness to get to awareness, to get to understanding, and to get to light. Okay? And so therefore, these two are perfectly balanced of the understanding of you've never seen them. You've never experienced them before. They are your imagination. God is your imagination, and Jesus is your imagination. God is still going to be there whether you decide to perceive God as an old man or an old woman. God is still going to be there the same exact way of whether or not you believe in nature or whether you believe in life. Life still exists, right? Nature still exists. Whether you believe in it or don't believe it does not affect it in any way, shape, or form. And so it's the exact same thing. It is still going to be there. So what we did is we took the heavier one, which is 432. We divided that in half to give it a lighter one, which is 216, pun intended. And then you end up having 18, which is humans. If you take the 12 steps times 18, takes you to 216. If you take the 18 times 24 hours a day, in other words, you are walking, living constantly as this alignment of God, you'll absolutely reach it. And you'll hit that point right then and there. And then once you're living as God, make no mistake, you won't be here anymore. There's no reason whatsoever. Because this life is not about saving people. This life is about allowing people to save themselves. It's about allowing people to have their own experiences. Because this life is literally just the stepping stone to the afterlife. That's why it's called afterlife. And whether you're talking about heaven or you're talking about the 4D, as Einstein did, it's the same exact thing. This first step is exceptionally important for the next step. And not in the way that we think, not in the way of torture, not in the way of punishment, not in the way of these really hard lessons, but in a way that is very yin and yang. It's very balanced, and it makes a lot of sense when you actually see it this way. Okay? So, again, just talking about it, we're talking about the 3, 4, 5 triangle. Just an added bonus here, I absolutely love the fact that if you take the 3, you can actually write sun, which is made up of 3 letters. If you take the 4, you have moon, which is made up of 4 letters. And if you take the 5, you have earth, which is made up of 5 letters. 3, 4, 5 gives you that for perfect balance. So whether you're talking about God, Jesus, and humans, which aka is matter, which aka is carbon, or whether you're talking about the sun, the moon, and the earth, it's all the exact same thing. And what's really cool is when you take and you add these up, and you take 432 and 216 and 18, you end up with, let he who hath wisdom count that number. Get your 9 vibes aligned.